All right, we're talking about what it means to have Jupiter in your first house. Jupiter, it's the best planet. It's my favorite planet. Literally, Jupiter's the best. You know that one friend that you have that's always an infectious good time? They always bring like good, buoyant energy. They don't take things too seriously. I'm just kidding. I'm a male in my 30s. I don't have any friends. What are we talking about? But if I did, Jupiter would be that one friend. Arguably the most benefic, favorable, good vibes planet in the whole chart. And wherever it is in our chart, it shows us where we feel a sense of inspiration and expansion and grace and communion with something more, something buoyant, something enlivening, something life-filled. Where do we get that spiritual excitement, that thing that just makes us feel like this is what I want to be doing in life, right? Jupiter is all about growth and expansion and new experience. When it's in the first house, that's a big position for Jupiter. Jupiter is associated with the Roman god Jupiter, the Greek god Zeus. These gods ruled the heavens, ruled the skies. They saw everything from a higher perspective. And while they were up there in limitless space, sometimes they had a little bit too much fun, right? We do have this idea of excess and imbalance along with the other archetypes of perspective and higher expansion and all that, personal growth. Jupiter is also about how we assign meaning and create meaning and our ability to use symbols and to find that symbols are something that's valuable to us. Anyway, when you have Jupiter in the first house, you're going to feel it. Other people are going to feel it. Trust me, you can have the absolute worst natal chart anyone's ever seen. It can be filled with squares and just a ton of bullshit. And like you're living a life where you trip on a highway and keep getting run over by an ice cream truck over and over again. That's not a fun, but having Jupiter in the first house, it's like a parachute, right? You're like, oh, this is not so bad. I could be getting run over by a dump truck, or yes, I'm in this highway and my life sucks. I'm gonna draw some meaning from it. It's meaningful to me. Folks with Jupiter in the first house are gonna have a very observable type of fire energy. They have that zest, they have that passion. First house Jupiter folks are larger than life, right? The rules don't apply to them. They live a life philosophy of it's gonna happen. I live a life of miracles, right? Things cometh, things get taken awayeth, but I'm gonna manifest it eventually, and I don't know how, but I know it's gonna happen. For these folks, life is something to be experienced. They wanna squeeze everything, all the pleasure, all the knowledge, all the philosophy that life has to offer, like a citrus fruit. As long as they don't have to do too much work squeezing it, right? They might get a juicer. How are they gonna get the juicer? Who knows, but they're gonna get it. It's very important for these folks to live a unique story. Jupiter is expanding wherever it touches. It's expanding the domain of where it lives. And in the house of self, you're expanding the limits of your identity and who you are. And yes, this person has to be unique. They have to feel it. They have to be living it. Sometimes these folks are attracted to doing certain things or making certain life choices because they just know it's going to be a great story. It's going to be fun or off the wall, or they're going to be able to put it in a memoir someday. Sometimes they look at everything through the lens of being the main character in a novel. And there's just also something innate in these folks' essence that tethers them to higher philosophy and their closely held ideological values. They put themselves in positions that they know are reflections of those philosophies and values, even when they don't always want to do it. Although they love feeling good, they don't necessarily want to always take the sweat of their brow approach. They will sometimes push themselves to do things they don't want when they know that it fits into their overarching philosophical system. And if it makes a good story, right? They know it's good to push yourself outside your comfort zone, doing things that is going to enact that or challenge that, right? Going skydiving if they're terrified of that, or taking all their clothes off when they're at a nude beach and they've up till now been insecure about their body, but they know they have to do it, right? They're going to continue to expand their growth. Even amidst the humdrum, mundane, routine life, they're always trying to find ways to attach meaning to it. Life is not beating the shit out of me, okay? I'm just like this ball of clay, right? And these are just higher order experiences that are like punching and kneading that clay into something that's going to be great. Just watch, it's going to be great. First house Jupiter folks, though, I wouldn't say that's the typical story where they're like kneading and grinding and going through the humdrum, right? They kind of short circuit that, right? They don't like that. It's not natural to them. And a lot of times they can get away with not having to do that. Somehow it does just work out. They plant a lot of seeds, they forget 95% of them, and then the ones that sprout manifest the best fruit trees. And it's just like, how did that happen? For them, getting so buried or getting so married to the humdrum or to the toil and the hard work, to them it's like, why would you live life like that, right? Life is like this dream. You have to enjoy it and explore it. If you were living a dream, you would go and do whatever you want. You wouldn't worry about, oh, do I have to do laundry? Am I going to bed on time? No, it's like you're not worried about waking up. You're not worried about what the physical laws of reality are in the dream. You're there to explore and to bounce off of them and to see what happens. And this difficulty with accepting rules and accepting limits, it's such a theme in the lives of these individuals. And that's for both good and for bad. And I think this aversion to limits, it exists on two levels of awareness for these folks. On one level, it's like completely ingrained. It's like how they operate. They don't really even have awareness over it. They get depressed by rules. Even the slightest obstacle or call for some self-restraint, even reasonable self-restraint, can feel for them like being thrown in a Kafkaesque bureaucratic labyrinth, right? Or being thrown in a jail for eternity at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Sometimes it's really not that extreme, but it's like Jupiter in the first house folks don't want to have anything to do with it because it's all the same to them. They got to avoid it. They got to step outside of it. They don't pay attention to these rules. They miss them, and it's not even a conscious choice. It's just, my head is in another place. My head is in the clouds. My head is in my ideas. They forget the rules even exist, or they just feel like they don't apply to them. They get pulled over while driving. They're speeding, and the cop is license and registration, and they're like, oh shit, sorry officer, here's my license. By the way, totally forgot to renew it. I don't think that's going to be a big deal, but here it is. Oh shit, I think I also let my registration lapse. Again, not any malice, I forgot to do it, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And then they come back and they get arrested or they get served with a bunch of tickets, and they're like totally offended and shocked. They want credit for the fact that they thought of it, it was on their mind, they were meaning to do it, but it just wasn't a priority, right? And they expect everyone to just give them a pass. And a lot of times they do get a pass. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. But they're not always going to get a pass. Sometimes it is going to come back to bite them. And on another level, and particularly the first house Jupiter folks that have engaged in a lot of reflection and gone through trial and error and become very self-aware, they arrive at this point where they realize these things about them and they realize this essence, and they decide to make it more of a deliberate choice. Not a choice of, oh, I'm not going to not renew my license or not pay my bills or do the things I need to do. It doesn't matter. Like, they realize they have to do some things, but they learn and they value channeling that positive and optimistic and inspirational and expansive energy towards their goals. And so they're often attracted to these concepts of manifestation and envisioning and thinking and seeing what they want, and law of attraction and going out and getting it. And there's a natural resonance for these folks with those ideas, with those philosophies. They're less worried about, oh, that can't work, or oh, I don't believe it, or I want this, but there's just too many obstacles in the way. They're really good at really applying the practices of, if I think it, I can create it, right? You know, socially and in social settings, when these folks are really channeling that Jupiter energy and they're at their best, they're so infectious, they're so social, they have such a great sense of humor. Nothing bothers them, right? They can bring people up, things happen, and you know, where some people are like, oh, everything is going wrong, or oh, you know, what the hell, they brush it off. Like, nothing can really bring them down. And that's the purity, that's like the most positive essence of this placement, is that ability to use it to lift people up and to literally dodge things and dodge things that would influence or bring people down or get people energetically caught. First house Jupiter people are like, it's like a giant force field of energetic, optimistic fire energy that's idealistic and philosophical and inclined toward personal growth and just fun, right? And it's awesome. It's like a superpower for them. And when they're in their best states and they're in social moods, they're like, yeah, let's go out and have a new experience. Oh, you want to do another drink? Yeah, let's talk some more. Let's catch up. We'll get another drink. You want to go on stage and do karaoke? That seems terrifying, but let's start it. Let's start the party. Let's start the dance floor. You want me to take a salsa dancing lesson or a stand-up comedy lesson with you? Sounds terrifying, but let's do it. It's going to be a fun experience. Ask a first house Jupiter person to take a last-minute international trip with you. That's the best person to ask. If there's any way that they can make it happen and they can swing it and they actually like you, they're going to try and make it happen because they'll love it as a story. They love the excitement and they love travel. That infectious energy is fed to, and first house Jupiter people love it, and they're attracted to those that vibe with that excitement, with that spontaneity, with that levity. People that are open and outward and want to talk about stuff, and they're open and they want to talk about things like growth or how their experiences in life have changed them and molded them and influenced how they view the world. People that can laugh at themselves, don't take themselves so damn seriously. People that aren't bogged down by the should word. Oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. Like, no superego for first house Jupiter people. It's, oh yeah, I should go to bed at 10. You're with someone like this and you might be like, I don't know if I can go, like I shouldn't stay up past 10, that's not good. Not getting good sleep's not good for me. And first house Jupiter person's gonna be like, yeah, that's true, but you know what else is not good for you? A life of crushing boredom and obligation and without fun or spontaneity. That's also not good for you, dude. So let's go, we're going out. Of course, then the next morning, everyone wakes up at 9:30 a.m. on a work day with a freaking mound of work to do. And it's like, all right, sweet, where's the higher meaning in this, right? Which brings me to some of the challenges of this placement. Sometimes these folks attach meaning to too much, or they're forcing it too much, believing that every little thing has to have some incredible meaning and having to talk about it and notice it and call out the symbols involved. This is super well-intentioned and it's super exciting and inspirational to the first house Jupiter person, but sometimes it just comes across as like preachy or heavy or judgy, or it's too much for some people. It's even too much for the person to actually do it all the time, right? Sometimes people are just trying to get by, take it day to day, meal to meal. Not everything has to be forced in to some grand philosophy. But the first house Jupiter person, they gotta figure out what works for them. It's okay that not everyone is gonna resonate with that energy. And while it's helpful for these folks to balance Saturnian energy within themselves to counterbalance their Jupiterian, Sagittarian traits, spending time or forcing themselves to spend time with people that have a heavy Saturn influence, that's not necessarily going to be helpful. People that are really like rules driven or like beholden to the structure and the opinions of others and the shoulds and the superego and all this. Oh God, first house Jupiter person freaking hates that. It deflates them utterly and completely on the most raw existential level. Jupiter people need to stay away from that. They need to like understand the value of it sometimes, but people that are completely over the top in the other direction, Jupiter person is just, it sucks. It's gonna make them feel deflated, depressed. They're such a drag. The rules, the restriction, the fear of other people, right? Always focusing on reasons not to do something. But you need to find a way to still capture that balance in other ways, right? Because the risk for first house Jupiter people is sometimes they take their very strong pleasure-seeking drive, what is ultimately a pleasure-seeking drive and an enjoyment of life's pleasures, and sometimes they attach even too much meaning or philosophy to that, and they find ways to justify or entrench what is actually sometimes too excessive or too risky behavior, right? A first house Jupiter person does engage in self-indulgence, and they probably need a little bit here and there. They need to have experiences once in a while where they don't have limits, right? And they can get away with that actually in some ways where other people can't. But sometimes they go so far and they get swept up in it and it can go off the rails. Addiction, overeating, overspending, risk-taking behavior. Jupiter folks can touch that stuff and even fall off the edge a little bit and be fine, but they do it too many times and again, it's hard. They need to be able to create some kind of guardrails for their life, whether it's specific commitments to people or people in their life that kind of keep them accountable. Better more so if it's part of the Jupiter person's own philosophy and life approach, something they can balance and have checks and balances for themselves. Because an afflicted first house Jupiter gone awry here, it's not just self-indulgence, it's not just the potential for addiction, it's like abhorrently unchecked self-indulgence and just complete self-centeredness and preoccupation with the self and feeding the self and feeding the dopamine urge and just hedonistic excesses that know no bounds and starts coming at the cost of like real things, some of the things that maybe the person once held to be meaningful, right? It starts getting engulfed in flames and eroding on itself. That's someone that has actually lost touch with the things that spiritually excite them and motivate them and inspire them, things that move their soul. When these things are forgotten by these folks, they put themselves in bad spots. That drive, that Jupiter drive to expand, they expand into any cracks that they can find. So they expand more into their own ego. They expand more into their bad habits, their self-indulgences. And they can become narcissists or addicts, or typically those two like to roll together. But as a general outlook, these individuals with this placement are going to have numerous opportunities to create success and abundance and wealth in their life, not just material wealth, but just wealth of experience, of meaning, of spiritual fulfillment, of really exploring the container of the self and seeing all of its flaws and its strength and its beauty and just appreciating that whole experience of coming to know themselves, right? On a real, deep and spiritual, but also super fun level, like all of that. This placement, it really is a gift in so many ways. Having said that, it can be hard to hold on to all the things that they gain, and especially here, material wealth, until they at least cultivate a little, just a teeny little bit of discipline here and there and develop some maturity and wisdom towards not always going to complete extremes. They don't need to transform who they are. They don't need to totally cut off this kind of larger than life essence, but they need just a little bit, right? It's like you're baking a cake. It needs a little bit of baking soda. You don't really taste it. No one gives a shit about baking soda. It doesn't get invited to the Oscars or the Emmys, right? But the cake can't happen without that little pinch. First house Jupiter people, they need a little pinch of discipline, just a little teeny bit of realism and self-restraint. Then they can bake a lot of cakes and maybe go to the Oscars or whatever. These folks do typically experience big failures in their life. They're not immune from that. It's just when they fall from super high, when they fall from the sky, they are sometimes able to just land on their feet and they bounce back. And you forget to put baking soda in that cake and it looks like a runny piece of crap, but it's salvageable. It's still tasty. It's still like cake batter. There's still a lot of goodness and a lot to work with, so to speak. This is the real essence of this placement. There is going to be a lot of trial and error. There's a tremendous commitment to this process of growth, and what makes them so successful is that they don't get so bogged down by those huge flat on your face failures that would totally derail someone's life, and mentally they wouldn't be able to bounce back from it. These Jupiter folks, it's wow, this is like a gift. This is a great lesson. Like they just attach meaning to the most horrible shit ever. And that's just how they bounce back and keep rolling on to brighter and greener pastures and new travels and new explorations and achievements. That self, it needs that room to fail. It needs that room to explore. And yes, sometimes that growth is going to come from being a totally unhinged, stupid idiot and a failure. But they have the ability to laugh at it later, right? It's that sense of humor. They don't take it all so seriously. Like with all placements, right? They do their best when they find the healthiest, most productive for them ways to scratch the itches associated with this energy, this archetype that Jupiter need to expand and explore and to stimulate. When these folks really feel like they get in a rut, the fix is really just a mindset shift for them a lot of times. Find that thing that can shift the mindset. It's about the right injection of the right sort of inspiration that re-enlivens the soul. It's just finding that one thing that can light the soul up again, like lighting that pilot light in a container that's just packed with flammable gas. Once they get that small little pilot lit, they find that inspiration, and the whole thing is back on fire again, engulfed in flames. It's combustion. It's an immediate change of state. And boom, off they go again. Sometimes it's a new trip, a journey outside the normal sights and sounds of everyday life. And it's a journey, or maybe it's a conversation that sparks something, a new thought. Or it's a little nugget that they read somewhere, or it's a movie, or something that gets them thinking. First house Jupiter people need to constantly be exposing themselves to like little nuggets of wisdom and culture and art, right? To constantly, keep their mind inspired and their soul enlivened and their soul stimulated, to constantly give themselves those opportunities to continue that path of growth. First house Jupiter people, so frequently, they're living a life based on a growth mindset. They're always constantly on a path of personal growth and self-fulfillment and more learned understanding. These are the types of folks you go to high school or college with. You don't see them for years, and then you suddenly see them in person at the grocery store. You see them on social media, and you're like, holy shit, I don't even recognize this person. They look different. They have all these different interests. It's awesome, but who are these people? They're constantly exploring and expanding, reinventing, and they're on that growth mindset path to constantly live the best version of themselves that they can. Most of the time, right? That's the best essence of this placement. It doesn't always happen that way, but you see it a lot. Again, sometimes this can go to extremes. It can become unbalanced. They can be very self-righteous or just way too idealistic in a way that alienates them from people, and in a bad way, right? It's not like they're rising to higher vibrations. They're just so, my shit doesn't stink, and I've been so thoughtful about how I'm living my life, and I can't associate with you, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, when this is well integrated in them, it's mature, it usually paves a path to tremendous accomplishment and self-mastery and expansion, just a fun, lived, experienced life, and a life that allows them to get away with their occasional excesses and self-indulgences and their occasional nights when they have too much to drink, or they have a little too much fun, or they're a little bit too risky in their decisions. It usually all works out. They're allowed a little bit of that. At the end of the day though, again, Jupiter in the first house, it's a big placement. It's a big set of shoes. These folks need to learn discipline, but they're also meant to be bold. They're meant to take some risks. They are visionaries. They have this contagious optimism, this wisdom that's usually delivered in a sunny and fun way. And again, when it's all well integrated, they also don't take themselves too seriously. They bestow these little nuggets of knowledge and wisdom, but like they also laugh at themselves and can joke about anything. Even the worst, most painful things become like a source of lightness and love and jokingness for them. They shouldn't shrink from this essence, this energy. They just need to learn how to balance it a little bit.